My name Istrison and I picked up a hitchhiker who was never really there. It was past midnight, and I was driving home from my shift at the gas station. The roads were empty, just miles of dark highway stretching ahead. That's when I saw a man standing by the side of the road, thumb out, face half hidden by the glow of the street lamp. I don't usually pick up hitchhikers, but something about him felt familiar, like I had seen him before. Without thinking, I slowed down and rolled down my window. "Need a ride?" I asked. He nodded, silent, and climbed into the passenger seat. For the first few minutes, he didn't say much, just stared straight ahead, hands resting in his lap. The car felt colder with him inside, like the heater wasn't working right. Then, finally, he spoke. "Long drive ahead." I glanced at him. His voice was strange, flat, distant, like an echo of itself. "Not too long," I muttered. "You from around here?" He didn't answer. Something about him made my skin crawl. I couldn't put my finger on it, but my hands tightened on the wheel. The road stretched endlessly ahead, the darkness pressing in around us. My headlights barely seemed to cut through it. Then I noticed the rearview mirror. He wasn't in it. My stomach twisted. I flicked my eyes back to him. He was still there, sitting stiffly in the seat, but the mirror reflected only me. I swallowed hard. My pulse pounded in my ears. I forced my voice to stay calm. "So, where are you headed?" Silence. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward me. The movement was too slow, too unnatural. I never left. The car swerved as my grip slipped from the wheel. I gasped, trying to regain control, my breath coming in ragged gulps. When I looked back at the passenger seat, tight was empty. I slammed on the brakes, my heart hammering. The road was deserted. The seatbelt lay undisturbed, the door still closed. He had vanished. Shaking, I turned my gaze back to the mirror, and there he was, in the back seat, smiling. My name is Ryan, and I still don't know what happened to that car. It was a slow night at the gas station, the kind where time drags, and the silence makes you second-guess every little sound. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but there hadn't been a customer in over an hour. I was about to step outside for some fresh air when the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in, tall, lean, dressed in an old gray jacket. His face was blank, unreadable, but his eyes, there was something off about them. He placed a 20 on the counter and simply said, "Pump 4." I nodded, punched it into the register, and glanced outside. That's when I saw the car. It was an old sedan, faded blue, parked at Pump 4. Nothing strange about it except that I hadn't heard it pull in. The lot was empty just minutes before. No headlights, no engine hum, nothing. I tried to shake the unease creeping up my spine and handed the guy his change. He didn't take it. He just turned and walked back outside, disappearing into the night. I waited, watching, expecting him to start pumping gas, but he never did. Instead, he opened the car door, slid inside, and just sat there. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. The pump handle remained untouched. The engine never started. He never moved. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, my breath misting in the cold air. The closer I got, the more I felt something was wrong. The inside of the car was pitch black, too dark. Even with my flashlight shining through the window, I couldn't see anything. No dashboard, no seats, no driver, just an abyss. I tapped on the window. "Sir?" My voice wavered slightly. No response. I reached for the door handle, hesitating. Every nerve in my body screamed at me not to open it. But something about the unnatural stillness compelled me forward. I pulled the door open. The car was empty. No driver, no seats, no interior at all, just a hollow shell, an endless, yawning void. Inside, my flashlight beam didn't touch anything. It just disappeared into the black. Then, from behind me, a whisper. You shouldn't have done that. I spun around, my heart hammering. The lot was empty. The car was gone. I stumbled back into the store, locking the doors, my hands shaking so badly. I nearly dropped my flashlight. The security footage from that night showed me standing outside, staring at nothing. There was never a car at Pump 4, but every few nights, I still check the lot, and sometimes, just for a second, I swear I see taillights fading into the dark. My name is Jake, and I still don't understand what I saw that night. I was working the late shift at the gas station, same as always. It was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional car pulling in for gas. Around 3 a.m., black sedan rolled up to pump number 4. Nothing unusual about that, till I realized the man inside wasn't moving. He just sat there, hands on the wheel, eyes staring straight ahead, engine running, but completely still. At first, I figured he was just taking a moment, maybe checking his phone, maybe lost in thought. But after 5 minutes, then 10, then 15, he still hadn't moved. I stepped outside, shivering in the cold night air, and walked toward the car. "Hey sir, everything all right?" No response. I got closer. The headlights cast long, eerie shadows across the pavement. That's when I noticed something was off. His hands weren't just on the wheel, they were gripping it tightly. His knuckles were bone white. His posture was rigid, unnaturally stiff, as if he were frozen in place. And then I saw his face. His features were blurred. Not like he was out of focus. Not like my eyes were playing tricks on me. His face looked wrong, as if someone had smeared his entire identity like wet paint. His eyes, his mouth, his nose, they were there, but shifting, melting together in a way that made my stomach turn. I stumbled back, my breath coming in shallow gasps, the air around the car felt wrong, heavy, pressing against me like invisible hands. I turned and bolted back inside, locking the doors behind me. Through the glass, I watched. The man didn't move. Then, without warning, the car's headlights flickered off. The engine died, and in the reflection of the station window, I saw him, not in the car anymore, right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the empty store, the humming refrigerators, the flickering fluorescent lights. My heart pounded as I turned back toward the window. The black sedan was gone, no sound, no movement, just gone. I checked the security cameras the next morning, needing proof that I hadn't lost my mind. But the footage showed nothing. No car, no man, just me, standing outside, talking to empty air. My name is Lucas, and I made the mistake of opening the back door. I worked the overnight shift at a quiet gas station off a deserted stretch of highway. The kind of place where no one stops unless they have to. The kind of place that should have been empty at 3 a.m., except for the door. The gas station had an old back door, one that had been bolted shut for years. My manager always told me, "That door doesn't open. Hasn't in a long time. Leave it alone." And I did, until the night it knocked. I had been restocking shelves when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic knock-knock from the back room. At first, I thought it was just the pipes, maybe the wind rattling the old frame. But then it happened again. 3 knocks, precise, expectant. I froze. No one should be back there. The only way in or out was through the main entrance, and I hadn't seen a single car in over an hour. Swallowing, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the stockroom. The door loomed in the dim light, heavy, rusted, a thick chain looped through its handle, secured with a padlock that had been there since before I was hired. Another knock. This time, the sound came from inside. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. That wasn't possible. There was nothing on the other side of that door but an old, empty storage shed. I should have walked away. I should have ignored it. but something compelled me forward, my fingers trembling as I reached out. Just a peek, just to prove to myself that nothing was there. I lifted the latch, the chain slipped free. The door swung open at first. There was nothing, just darkness, a vast, endless black that stretched deeper than the storage shed should have allowed. It was like looking into a tunnel with no end. My flashlight flickered, the beam swallowed by the void. Then, a whisper. Finally, cold air rushed past me, and something moved inside the darkness. A shape, shifting, stretching toward me. Long fingers, hollow eyes, a grin too wide for any human face. I slammed the door shut and threw the chain back into place, my hands shaking violently. The knocking started again immediately, harder this time, more urgent. I stumbled backward, grabbing my phone, but my screen was nothing but static. No service, no escape. I ran to the front of the store and waited, heart hammering. The knocks continued for what felt like hours. Then, just as suddenly as they had begun, they stopped. Morning came. My shift ended. My replacement arrived. I didn't say a word. I quit the next day, but sometimes, when I pass by that gas station late at night, I see the back door, and it's always slightly open. My name is Ethan, and I should have quit my job the first time I saw him. I worked the night shift at a small gas station off a lonely highway. It wasn't a bad job, boring most of the time, but peaceful. Most nights, I'd get a handful of truckers and late-night travelers, filling up their tanks and grabbing snacks. But then he started coming. It was always the same. At exactly 2:37 a.m., the bell above the door would chime. A tall man in an old, tattered coat would step inside. He never spoke. He never bought anything. He just stood there, staring at me from under the brim of his hat. His face was shadowed, his features impossible to make out. Every night, I'd ask, "Can I help you?" And every night, he wouldn't answer. Just stood there for a few minutes before turning and walking back out into the night. It was unsettling, sure, but I told myself he was just some drifter, maybe homeless, looking for shelter, until I checked the security footage. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe deep down, I already knew something was wrong. But when I rewound the tape, my stomach twisted. The doorbell chimed. The camera caught the door, swinging open, but no one was there. The tape showed me standing behind the counter, visibly nervous, talking to nothing, looking straight at empty space, as if someone was standing there. I replayed it over and over, my fingers trembling. Each time, it was the same. The door opened. The bell rang. I reacted, but the store was empty. That night, when 2:37 a.m. rolled around, I held my breath. The bell rang. The air turned ice cold, and there he was. I forced myself to look up, but this time, he had moved closer. I felt my throat tighten. He wasn't by the door anymore. He was standing at the counter, right in front of me. I don't know how I didn't hear him move. He tilted his head slightly, as if studying me. Then, in a voice that sounded like dry leaves rustling, he whispered, "You can see me now." The lights flickered. I bolted. I didn't think. I just ran out the back door, into the freezing night, gasping for breath. My manager found me the next morning, huddled behind the dumpster, shaking. I quit that day. But sometimes, late at night, when I drive past that gas station, I swear I see someone standing at the window, waiting.